After nearly 6 months with the Rivian R1T, it was finally time to let it go, and it's off with its new family now. So let's reflect on my time with the R1T, talk about what I liked, what I didn't like, and why I did not end up keeping it. You see, when I pre-ordered the R1T, what seems like a century ago, but was probably about 3.5 years ago or so, I really thought to myself, if this works out, I will buy the R1T back from my company, and then I will keep it, and it will be my forever electric vehicle, because this sounds perfect. The off-road, practically sized pickup truck that's electric, etc. I was really hot to trot on that concept, and as a result, way back when, I ended up leasing a Dodge Durango because I knew it wasn't going to happen for a while, and I needed something that I could get rid of easily, so I leased a vehicle because my Rivian was coming. Now, that's a tale for a different time, but ultimately the Rivian did end up being here, and I didn't end up keeping it. Handy to note that I also am not going to keep the Ford Lightning, in case anybody is wondering. So it has nothing to do specifically with the Rivian. There's some other reasons that I'm not keeping it. I'll touch on those at the end of the video. But let's just dive into the R1T itself and what I see as the R1T's pros and cons after having lived with it for quite some time. The first thing is I think it is really attractive. I know that not everybody is a fan of the R1T's design, and to them I say, you're wrong. The R1T is really pretty, and I think it is more attractive than the F-150 Lightning. It's definitely more attractive to my eye than the Hummer, also the Silverado EV, and basically all the other EV trucks that are coming out. I love the clean and simple lines that Rivian has designed into the vehicle. Now, on the downside, the one thing with the design that I find a little bit problematic, I guess you'd say, is the fact that the front lid opens just like a lid on a top rather than having the whole grille come up with it. That's just a functional thing. I don't think anybody really expected what Ford did with the Lightning, and it turned out to be a really practical touch. And I love how Ford did that on that vehicle. It really makes the load-in height lower, but it's certainly something that you could live with. As far as cargo capacity goes, I think that the Rivian does really well here. The frunk is smaller than the one in the Lightning, but we have the behind rear seat cargo tunnel there. That is fantastic. It's a really great use of the space. It's something that is really, frankly, wasted in the F-150 Lightning. The bed is a little bit smaller and the frunk is a little bit smaller, but I think that the arrangement of different cargo areas and their sizes and their shapes really makes the R1T very practical. Is it as practical as a half-ton truck? Maybe not, but it's more right-sized than the average half-ton truck. Now, about that size, the R1T is not as small as some people might think. It's lengthwise not far off the Lightning, and wheel-to-wheel width is not far off the Lightning either, but the body has a really accentuated bell shape, I guess you could say, where the greenhouse and the cab are considerably narrower than the track of the vehicle. That gives it excellent stability and excellent handling characteristics, but it does mean that for the amount of parking lot real estate that it takes up, the inside is a little bit smaller. Now, performance is definitely a strong suit for the Rivian. 4 electric motors, bonkers horsepower totals, insane 0 to 60 acceleration times. Even if you have a 9,000 or 10,000 trailer on the back of it, this is still going to be insanely fast. With a 9,500-pound trailer on the back, we ran 0 to 60 in around 8 seconds. So this is faster than a lot of compact crossovers will ever be. Well, this is towing that compact crossover on a really heavy trailer, with the bed loaded and 2 or 3 people inside. It is absolutely insane. Also really excellent is the off-road capability. The standard adaptive height air suspension is really handy. It has a lot of ground clearance capability, and even in its lowest height setting, it's still going to be higher off the ground than something like the Lightning. Also, this is easily the most efficient EV truck out there. It's really obvious that Rivian spent a lot of time on the electric drivetrain efficiency. Simply driving down the road, especially if you have this in eco mode, you really will be able to go over 300 miles in the quad motor mid-pack version, so I have absolutely no doubt that the big battery pack, whenever it finally arrives from Rivian, will probably go over 400 miles. We're talking really excellent range. Over 3 miles per kilowatt hour, if you treat it gently, is excellent for any modern EV, not to mention a big heavy pickup truck like this. Now, there are some caveats. If you have cargo in the vehicle, if you're putting 1,000 pounds of payload or people in the vehicle, if you've got stuff in the bed, if you're not driving it in the eco mode, if you're driving it in the all-purpose modes, then your economy is going to drop decently below 3 miles per kilowatt hour. But it's still going to be pretty good as far as the range goes, and it's always going to be more efficient than the F-150 Lightning. Now, let's talk about some of the downsides and some of the okays. The off-road manners are a little bit unusual. If you're an off-road purist, and you are used to locking differentials, a locking front, a locking rear, a true locking center coupling, where all 4 of those wheels are spinning at exactly the same rate all the time, then you are probably not going to be a big fan of the way the R1T feels out on the road. And that's because there are 4 separate motors doing 4 separate things. Now, the software will try and make them spin at the same rate, but the only way that it can move power around is when one wheel slips. So in some ways, the behavior of the 4-wheel drive system in the R1T feels kind of like a vehicle with open differentials and brake-based actuators on them. It feels like that, but it's much more capable than that. But it still has that particular feeling. So if you're in off-camber situations, say where you're teeter-tottering and a front left wheel and a right rear wheel are off the ground and you're just teeter-tottering there like that, and the vehicle is trying to figure out where to send the traction, there are going to be these moments where it doesn't know what to do and there's some wheel spin involved. You can end up, as a result, chewing up trails a little bit more than you would in something with true lockers. That could offend some folks out there. I don't think it's a huge deal, however. As far as the driving dynamics go, some people aren't going to like the fact that it feels a little bit different than a regular pickup truck. It actually drives more like a Grand Cherokee or a Range Rover with the back cut off. Now, that does not mean that this is a unibody pickup truck. There's a lot of debate about there. This has a separate frame. The quirk with the Rivian is that the frame and skateboard thing, where all the drivetrain components mount to, is glued to the cab. And the cab and bed are one piece in order to enable that gear tunnel. But this is a body-on-frame vehicle. So all that capability, all that rigid structure, etc., it's all baked into the equation. The reason they bond these two things together, and the reason the bed and cab are all one piece, is because it adds extra structural rigidity to the vehicle, and you need that for off-roading. Now, on the downside, a little bit more aggressively on the downside here, we have Rivian still working out the kinks of their process. The sales process, the service process, some of the design processes are a little bit lacking here. The powered tonneau cover, I think, was a great idea. It does need a bit more time in the oven, though. When those little sections collapse, it's pretty loud. It's a little unrefined. But also, leaves get sucked in and the leaves just don't come out. And based on some of the teardown videos I've seen and the fact that Rivian is no longer selling that option, it's kind of a problem that they really haven't solved. Theoretically, there's going to be an updated version with 2 electric motors coming soon, but at the moment, if you're getting a new Rivian, not on offer, and if you have a cargo cover that is powered and it fails, sounds like they're not going to really be replacing them. Also, in my limited experience with Rivian service, it does take a while, and some things like ordering parts are just nonsensical because you can't simply order a part from Rivian and have that part show up. Instead, you have to schedule a service appointment, you have to explain why, blah, 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 blah. They schedule someone to come out with the part. And rather unfortunately, if your vehicle is not present when they bring the part out, they won't just give you the part for you to deal with. They have to install the part. Even if it is something incredibly simple, like the cover for the tow hitch receiver, which on our Rivian R1T ended up falling off for whatever reason, they won't just bring you another cover out and leave it with you so you could put it on, even though theoretically you're supposed to take it on and off when you tow, and then you want to be more aerodynamic. So that's a little bit weird there. Also on the weird front, Rivian is really dedicated to not supporting Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. I really hope that's something that they bring to the vehicle in the future. There's no particular reason that they could not support that functionality with the existing vehicle. I suspect that the way that their hardware is architectured, it probably would work without anything more than just a simple software modification. But Rivian doesn't seem to be inclined, probably because Tesla isn't inclined, and this is kind of the next generation, I guess, of that same design ethos. Also a little weird on that same design front is the air vent situation. These have sort of manual looking like louvers inside the air vents, but they are computer controlled and they never really seem to blow the air where I want to blow the air. I would love to hear from you if you have a Rivian R1T or an R1S. Does that bug you or not? Let me know in the comments section. It just seemed like I couldn't really get the air going where I wanted. I tend to like air blowing more on my face than some people, so maybe that could be it. The HVAC system is also fairly loud, and that's something something that did surprise me. Whether you're just charging the vehicle at a DC fast charge station or it's sitting there idling or pre-cooling, if it's 75 degrees outside, it kind of sounds like a helicopter is going to take off. They have addressed some of that with software updates, but it still seems to be a little on the loud side. Now, more extreme problems, and these are the problems that I don't think they can fix in software just because of the architecture of the vehicle. Vampire drain is excessive. If you haven't seen some of my videos on that, go ahead and check them out. Basically, when the vehicle is hanging out there doing absolutely nothing, it is consuming an insane amount of power. And if you leave the vehicle just parked there for 2 weeks, you could expect to see over 25% of your battery just poof, gone for no particular reason. And a corresponding Lightning or other modern EV made by some company other than Tesla is going to be basically zero consumption over that time, or effectively zero. Exactly what's going on, we don't know. We tried everything. We tried the shipping mode. We tried the low power consumption modes. We turned the gear guard off. We did everything that Rivian's PR people said to do. It still consumed an insane amount of power. Also a deal breaker, honestly, for me, is the towing behavior and the towing tech on the vehicle. This is a bit more of a nuanced problem because for most shoppers, it's probably not going to be a big deal. Not too many people out there tow, even with regular half-ton trucks. People with mid-sized trucks tow even less frequently. People with EVs tow even less frequently than that. Exactly how many people will end up towing with an EV truck, I don't know. I suspect it's not going to be 90%. It's probably going to be, single-digit percentage-wise. If this is you, you should keep a few things in mind. The first thing, all the active safety stuff turns off on the Rivian R1T for some reason. That's likely fixable in software. I suspect they're already working on it, although they wouldn't talk about that. The most logical reason is that vehicle driving dynamics change when a trailer is connected, and they might not have all those calibrations done yet for the adaptive cruise control. But lane centering, adaptive cruise control, some of the active safety systems, they all disable when a trailer is connected. And over on every other vehicle that tows practically, things like blind spot monitoring, lane centering, all that kind of stuff still works. And if you get a GM truck, of course, Super Cruise still functions when you have a trailer connected as well. Then there are some hardware things that cannot be fixed, like the position of the backup camera. The camera's really low on the vehicle. It's just above the license plate, so you get a very odd view of your trailer hitch. If you're trying to back your hitch up right here to the ball of your trailer, and you're looking at it head on like this, you can't really tell whether the trailer is over that. But if you have a top-down view, you could very easily see exactly when things are aligned. And that's the problem in the Rivian R1T that we don't see in the Lightning or other trucks, because other trucks have the camera positioned quite a bit higher on the tailgate, so you do have that top-down view on the hitch receiver. Also, the hitch receiver is really far under the vehicle, so you have to crawl under there a lot further than you find in really any other truck or SUV out there. That's simply aerodynamics, and that's something that I could certainly live with. It really makes it look really clean on the back because you don't have that hitch sticking out, but it does make it a little bit difficult to interact with the trailer. Also, there's some cargo carrying realities here. Getting into the bed is not going to be as easy because there aren't hitch steps. There isn't a big bumper with a big cutout back there. But again, all of that is aerodynamics. And all of that is the reason that the R1T is so much more efficient than the average truck in America. Now let's roll through the dollars and cents, because when it comes right down to it, this was a big factor in my decision to not end up keeping the R1T. It just ended up too expensive for me. I couldn't see myself spending this much money. The R1T was $83,814, absolutely all in. That included the $1,000 deposit and the final payment of $82,814. That, of course, included sales tax in my county in California. Now, if you're ordering an R1T today, you should know that your R1T is going to be a lot more expensive because this was the pre-pricing increase pricing that they honored for initial reservation holders. So it's about $75,000 or so plus all the taxes, etc. Now, because I didn't just have $83,000 hanging out, the company ended up holding this vehicle on our corporate line of credit, which is, of course, prime plus interest rate. So that interest rate ended up being $3,795 worth of interest over the 6 months that we had the vehicle. Yes, business interest rates are a little higher. Also higher are corporate insurance rates. So to hold the corporate policy just for this vehicle, it was almost $2,500. So now we're $90,000 into the R1T. If I were to buy the vehicle from the company, obviously I could have given myself a sweetheart deal, but somehow I would have still spent $90,000 because I own the company. So that really wouldn't have worked out math-wise. So frankly, $90,000 for a new truck was just too rich for my blood. Same exact problem with the Lightning. Now, we were able to sell it for a slight profit. We sold it for $105,000. So bottom line, we ended up making nearly $15,000 on the truck. Of course, keep in mind, there are employees to pay, employee benefits, blah, blah, blah. So all of that's just going into the pool there, and hopefully we'll be able to give employees raises at the end of the year. Now let's talk about why I didn't end up keeping the R1T. Obviously, finances have something to do with this. The company doesn't have 90 grand around, which is why it was on a line of credit. I don't have $90,000 hanging around because not enough of you are hitting that subscribe button and clicking on those ads. So, that's definitely something to keep in mind. But seriously here, the R1T would have been at least $20,000 more than I have ever spent on a vehicle. And the last time I bought a vehicle, the Durango SRT, the 392 version, I thought I was absolutely insane for spending $70,000 on a new vehicle. My target price really would be an awful lot less than that, and I will probably be paying that vehicle off for, a long, long time. At any rate, I still owe money on that vehicle. I would have had to have traded it in or sold it or whatever in order to get out of that loan payment. That would have required some juggling of finances around. And in the end, the Rivian still would cost so much more. And that was a really, really tough bar to jump over. Then we have the vampire drain, which is more of a consideration for me, honestly, than I think a lot of folks out there. But keep this in mind. If you are the kind of person that maybe only drives 20, 30 miles a day, the Rivian R1T is going to be more efficient than the Lightning, but at the end of a week, the Lightning might actually have consumed less electricity. You might be thinking, what's going on here? Well, if the Rivian R1T is consuming 2 to 3 kilowatt hours a day or something like that, then you have to factor that into your actual energy consumption. It's not just the energy consumption driving down the road, it's the idle energy consumption that factors into that holistic picture. Now, if you're doing a lot of driving, then certainly the R1T is going to be more efficient, and I'm sure that given time, Rivian is going to work on that efficiency picture and they're going to continue to improve. But based on the architecture of the vehicle and its more dedicated central computing cores in the vehicle, rather than the distributed modules that we find in the Lightning, I suspect it's never going to be quite as efficient as far as that vampire drain goes. Now, I live off-grid at home. That kind of vampire drain is really, really difficult for me to just handle. I would have to leave it plugged in all the time. Probably on a level 1 connector would be fine. Just set the battery to 80% and it would keep that 80% battery charge. But that's still a bummer because I would be consuming power day and night, and I don't generate any power at night. Then, of course, there's just pickup truck energy efficiency, which is not where we find a lot of other EVs currently on the market. And that means it would be tricky really for me to integrate any kind of big boxy vehicle into my off-grid living situations. High-efficiency EVs like a Chevy Bolt EUV or, interestingly enough, the Kia EV6, which have a combination of high driving efficiency and very low vampire drain, those would be a lot easier to integrate, but they're not tow vehicles, so that's kind of a problem. Then we have the way that the vehicle tows. I only own 2 vehicles myself. I have an old Jeep Grand Cherokee and we have the Dodge Durango. And this theoretical vehicle that would be this do everything and tow everything vehicle would replace the Durango for that particular use case, both commuting and towing, but it tows an awful lot. My Durango probably has at least half of its miles on the odometer with a trailer on the back of it. That definitely is kind of a bummer with an EV. And initially I thought about 3 years ago, you know what, I never tow that far. This shouldn't be a problem. I could live with the kind of towing range that you would get in an electric truck. As it turns out, though, I end up towing at least once or twice a year about 300 to 400 miles. That would be a bummer with any electric truck at the moment with the kind of public charging that we have in the US. So I just had to exclude these vehicles, and the amount of time that they take to charge from 0 to 100% ends up being a problem personally there as well. That's, again, another limited use case thing. If you're towing things on a regular basis, you're going to be really interested in the 100% to 0% towing range and the 0% to 100% charging time, because you're going to need to get all the way back to 100% so you could tow another 150 or 160 miles. We have a different kind of construct with road trips. With road trips, you drive 300 miles in the Rivian, take it down to 10%, you charge 10% to 80%, kick it on in for another 200 miles. 500 miles a day is a lot of driving, and then you charge it overnight at your hotel or wherever, and repeat the process the next day. That's not a problem. The towing, that is a bit more of a bummer. Anyway, so that's my bottom line on the R1T. It was a great vehicle. It just ended up not being a good fit for me. And a little bit of a spoiler alert, a lot of similar problems going on with the Lightning, which is why it's not sticking around either. The towing problems are a little bit less of a problem with the Lightning, but the price tag, definitely a bummer with the Lightning since it was more expensive than the Rivian. Let me know what you think about that down there in the comment section below. And do you have an R1T? Do you like it? Do you not like it? What would you change down there? Let me know all of that in the comment section, and I'll see all of you later.